When you have a success at one magazine, submit again, talk to the editor. The editor might like you and say,
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Alison McBain with me. Alison, thanks for joining me.
oh, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited for this. I saw that you're working on a project, Author vs. AI. Admittedly, I know very little about it. I read it a while ago, so I'm going to let you tell me and the audience about it.
Sure. So I write pretty fast. I write for my profession. I'm a ghostwriter and editor. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and we are discussing AI. And of course, AI is sort of the hot button topic right now. It's on everyone who's in any sort of creative sphere, it's on the tip of their tongue. Um, and it is, of course, encroaching on the writing world right now. So we were discussing about how new writers, especially, feel a bit threatened by it. Like, I've had discussions with writers who have said, "Okay, why should I even write a book? Pretty soon the computer will just do it for me." So through my discussion with my friend, we came up with the idea that something that maybe not a lot of writers can do, but I was very happy to tackle and sort of bring awareness to the idea that, writers write. So what I'm doing is I'm writing a book a week for a year. And it's to show that writers can write maybe almost as fast as AI, but hopefully much better.
That's really, really awesome. Very ambitious to be able to do that. And how's that coming along so far?
Well, right now we're in week 12, so far, so good.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. I know a lot of people try to do similar things. I remember seeing somewhere, and this was a while ago at this point, maybe a year or two ago, someone was trying to write a song a week or a song a day or something like that, and they were posting on social or something like that. Very, very ambitious. I cannot write to save my life, so I applaud your efforts for that. That is really, really cool. In doing that, what kind of challenges have you come up with trying to churn out so much quality work so quickly?
I do a lot of writing for a lot of ghostwriting for clients. So I can write pretty fast for them. I was writing approximately about 40,000 words a week, sometimes, not all the time. So one of the biggest challenges I found was that I'm not giving myself a break in between. So for clients, I would give myself a break, or I might take a day here or there, or in between projects. So with this, I'm doing it nonstop, week to week to week. So now I think I've settled into my groove, but I think it was like week 4 or 5. I was starting to get the characters a bit mixed up, and I was like, oh, is Sophia in this one, or is Miriam in this one? So like when I'd sit down, sometimes I'd have to reorient myself to what project I was working on that week. And then when people asked me, like if I went on a podcast like this one, and they're like, oh yeah, what book is it this week? I'd be like, uh so, so I was a bit stumped sometimes. Now I'm much more into, okay, that's put away. I finished that one from that last week, and now I'm in this one for this week. So I think again, I've hit my stride. I like to compare it to a marathon. So like I did my training. I'm right now I'm in the stretch, and hopefully I can keep up this pace.
That is just amazing. That is so amazing. So what's the length of the books like? What are the genres like? Are they completely different? Are they kind of the same? Do any of them kind of like continue from one book to the next? Do you do spin-off characters? I'm very curious how you kind of come up with fresh ideas so quickly.
Well, yes, all of the above. So basically, I did a lot of preparation ahead of time. So I'm not just sitting down and coming up with an idea on the spot. So before I started this project in April, I did chapter by chapter outlines. I had all the summaries written. I ran them by my writers group. And actually, there are a few ideas that I came up with that my writers group was just told me, no, just no, don't do this one. So this one sucks. So there were a few I threw away and had to replace. So I had all that prepared ahead of time so that every week now I can just sit down and write. But it is all genres. I enjoy reading all genres. I enjoy writing all genres. So far I've tackled horror and humor and fantasy and sci-fi and romance and YA, and there's even a zombie novel in there. So like, anything that you can think of, I'm trying to hit all the genres that I can possibly think of.
So can you give us a sneak peek of something that's coming up in the remaining 40 weeks, I guess. Which one are you most excited about that you haven't already tackled?
When I was an angsty teen, I of course read vampire books. So I do have a vampire book that I hope is unique that is coming up. But it sort of incorporates mythology with Chinese mythology with vampires, and is set in New York City. So it should be a fun romp. I like to describe it as sort of Interview with a Vampire meets the Joylet Club. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I'm looking forward to that project. It's probably going to be later down the road. I might throw that into the month of October just for, to go along with the theme of Halloween. I'll probably be writing some more gothic type of stories then.
And are they short stories? Are they how long are these books?
Sure. So the definition of a novel is 40,000 words and above. Most books are longer than that, but that is my goal for every week, making sure I cross the finish line of 40,000 words. Some are longer, and some of the bigger projects I'm probably going to tackle later. For example, I have a historical fiction book that's going to be part of it, and historical fiction is generally much longer because you got to pack a lot of stuff in there. So I might tackle that during a quiet week where I could just, send my kids off to play in the park, and I'll just be at home writing.
As much as I want to read, I just cannot do it. I was talking to one of the other people through time we discussed, and I was saying, my mind just tends to wander. I usually cannot stay focused. So it's a big chore for me to try to read. So when you say 43,000 words, I have no concept of that. Is that like, what kind of a book could you compare that to? Is that like a 700-page book that's like, yay big? What would that equate to?
Let's see. Sorry, I go by word count because that's normally how you submit your
No, that makes
manuscript.
sense.
So I would say like about an 85,000 word book would be maybe 350, 400 pages approximately. So depending on genre, like fantasy tends to be a lot longer. So those are the ones, like you think of George R. R. Martin. Those are the ones that are door stoppers, right? But romance tends to be shorter. For example, those are the skinnier books, and those are about, 50 to 70,000 words.
So as you finish one book and you get ready to move on to the next book, what do you do with that book once it's done? Are you selling those online? Are you giving them away? What's happening to them when they're done?
Right now, they're just sitting. So, one thing I do every week at the end of the week, is I read an excerpt from each of these books that I've just finished. And that's on my YouTube channel. It's on my website. You can get a listen. There are some publishers who are interested in some of these books, and of course, I'm going to have to find a number more because no one publisher can publish 52 books by one author in a short amount of time. But yeah, so they will eventually all be published. That's my goal. And some might even be self-published. I do have some traditional publishers who are interested in several of them.
That is awesome. That's a huge feat. Congratulations on even attempting to try that. That
Thanks.
is fantastic. So let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about your ghostwriting experience there. What is that like on a typical day when you're doing ghostwriting?
It's a lot like writing for myself, except I do have a boss who tells me yes or no. So I sort of fell into it. Like I've been an editor for a number of years, and at one point I had a client who received my edits and was like, "These are fantastic. I love what you want me to do with this book. Can you do it?" And I was like, you know what? I've never done that. I would love to give it a try. And I did. And I have collaborated with authors on other pieces like short stories, or I publish a magazine. So I am used to collaborating with other authors and editors. Um, but it was a very unique experience, and it was fun to do and help bring this work that they wanted to get published to life. And so I started doing that in addition to doing editing and writing for myself. But it's a huge variety of how I do it. So for example, for ghostwriting, I could just, they could come to me with an idea and say, okay, we want a romance story in like a set in Boston, and we want opposites attract kind of thing. And I'll be like, okay. And then I'll send them a proposal and an outline, and they'll say yes or no and ask for changes, and then I'll just start writing. Other writers that I work with will come to me with sort of like a half finished draft, or they'll come to me with speaking of word counts, like maybe a 20,000 word draft, and say, this is too short for a book, but I want it to be a book. Can you help me with this? So I'll sort of expand it, like I already have the basics of what they want for their story, and we'll discuss how they want it expanded. So I'm flexible. I love just bringing stories to life, authors' ideas to life. So whether it's my own or someone else's, I'm happy to step in there.
A number of months ago, I was talking to a child book author, Aubrey Andrus, and she also did ghostwriting. And one of the questions I had for her, and I'm going to give you the same question, I said, when you are writing a book for essentially for someone else, and then your name may get omitted from that book, what does that do to your ego? Was that hard to stomach at first? Have you not experienced that? Has your name always been there with the other author? What was that experience like for you?
Oh, my name's never there. um, it's okay. I'm a fast writer. So I suppose if it took me, 5 years or 10 years to write my own magnum opus, I might feel more invested, I guess, in these works that don't have my name. But to me, I write quickly. I have lots of publications to my own name. So this is just work that I'm doing to help other authors find their own stories. So to me, there's no ego involved at all. And I'm happy to do it.
That's interesting. It's very cool to hear too. Let's talk about your education and how that is factored into what you do. Did you go to school for creative writing, for editing? How does your formal education tie into what you're doing now?
It fostered my love of just reading and research. So I did get a BA in African history and classical literature, double major. Um, but for years I did nothing with it. I just like to read. And those are research heavy topics. So they were a lot of fun, I thought. But I do sort of come by my profession honestly. My mom is a copywriter, or copy editor, I should say, copy editor. So I grew up with always having my grammar corrected, which was annoying when I was a kid, but it actually sort of fostered in me like, okay, this is the proper way to do things. And I'm sure it helped steer me into the editing that I do, because to me, it's very clear where a comma belongs. And a lot of people will be like, I don't know where to throw the comma in, So yeah, it's just a natural, talent, I guess.
I correct my kids on their speaking grammar a fair amount. And
Yeah.
my wife, she corrects me on that. She's like, you got to loosen up a little bit. There's still, I'm like, I know, but still, I'm trying to develop those good habits. I don't want them. So, Alison, I've spoken to a number of different people that they've either gone through the traditional publishing route or the self-published route. Have you had experience doing the self-published route? I'm specifically interested in that.
I have definitely done both. So I run my own press and have published some of my books under my own imprint, and have also published others. But my first book, my debut book, was one that I had published myself. It's called The Rose Queen. It's a YA fantasy. And I was a steep learning curve, let me tell you. I was ready, and one of the editors who I work with, PC Keeler, at the time we were neighbors, and I would go over to his house and be like, should I just give up right now? I'm ready to pull out my hair, this is not for me. And he would talk me off that ledge and be like, no, you can do it. You can, rah, rah, you can do it. And I did. And, after you do it once, you get all the, bugs out, you figure out how to do it, and you can keep on publishing. I did also have work traditionally published, my shorter work, poems, essays, things like that, as well as a couple of books.
You mentioned that you published other people's books. So that is interesting. Tell me about that experience.
My press is the Fairfield Scribes, and it rose from my writers group. And most of the editors are actually, we're still in a writers group together that meets every Thursday. And we have a lot of fun getting together. And we started out by publishing anthologies because we knew a lot of wonderful authors, some of whom had never been published, and we wanted to get their voices out there. And it sort of snowballed from there. But we do publish individual projects. We're not open to outside submissions, but we do pick projects from authors that we know. The anthologies are open to general submissions whenever we have a new anthology out. But just individual books will work with an author very closely to get their work out there because we think it's fabulous.
That's really cool. So how did you go about creating that? Was that difficult to get started? And I'm assuming you're doing distribution in some capacity. How does that all work for you?
Because we only take project by project and we don't, I would say we publish 1 to 2 books a year. It's not that difficult. So like if we were publishing, 500 books a year, yeah, that would be a bit hard. But we can really focus on each book that we release and do promotions and work with, as I said, work with the author. And so it is a lot of labor of love. Like we really want to be involved in launching that author and making sure that they see great success.
That is awesome. So if I know you say you don't take outside submissions,
Yeah.
but if someone wanted to try to snake the right in, how could they do that? Would they have to be part of your writers group? And then, fingers crossed, hopefully something that they're writing is appealing to your group. How would that work?
Well, honestly, a lot of books that we're publishing now have arisen out of the magazine that we're publishing. So our magazine is Scribes Micro, and we publish very, very short work. So it's between 90 to 110 words. So it's about a paragraph. And so we publish every month, and we usually have about 20 authors, and you get to know the authors. And some authors that we've worked with are now editors with us because we like them so much and they like us, and now they're part of the team. So a lot of the projects we're taking on right now are from that relationship that we've built with our authors. So again, this is something that I always advise to new writers. When you have a success at one magazine, don't think it's a one-off and go wandering away. Okay, I checked that magazine off my list. I don't have to ever be published by them again. No, submit again, talk to the editor. The editor might like you and say, you know what? Do you have a longer work? We'd love to publish something bigger by you. And that's how a lot of our current projects have come about. So definitely build relationships with your editors because they love your work.
That is very, very good advice. I appreciate that. Alison, when it comes to promoting different publications, so your books or even books that you are publishing, do you tend to work with a publicist? Is it all like through your own group? How does that work for you?
I actually have a fabulous publicist, Mickey from Creative Edge, and I actually signed with him quite recently. I've worked with other uh, publicist companies before in the past and done advertising, reached out myself to a number of places, print publications, podcasts, etc. But it's wonderful if you find someone who just really is supportive and can be part of your team in getting your work out there, because honestly, it's not easy. It's not easy to get, there's a lot of very wonderful authors out there. And so sometimes it's hard to stand out from the crowd. Your work might be fantastic. It might win awards. It might, readers might love it, but sometimes it can, there's maybe a dozen other books released that are somewhat similar. So definitely if you find someone you can work with, or again, if you find a host, a podcast host, a magazine that really likes your work, and keep on reaching out to them, keep on building that relationship. And you never know. I've had there's a lot of networking in this business. So I've had people say, "Oh, you should meet so and so, or you should talk to so and so," and then you go off on this tangent. Okay, and then they introduce you to someone. Oh, you should meet so and so. So it's a very friendly, a friendly industry, I would say. Which is sort of it sounds odd because there is also a lot of rejection in this industry, but when you find your people,
At what point, and this is just, obviously from your experience, at what point does an author say, you know what, I need a publicist at that point? Is there something specific that happens that kind of triggers that? Or is it just kind of like, oh, well, publicist, I haven't thought about that before. Maybe I'll try that. What was that like?
I would suggest there might be 2 points in an author's career that it might be helpful to reach out to someone to work with someone. One might be your debut book. So that's, again, speaking of steep learning curves, you don't know what you're doing. Your book's coming out, whether you're self-publishing or you're working with a company, and you're not sure what to do. It's a very steep learning curve, and you might fall down on a great opportunity. So again, I would say debut authors, if you're not sure what to do and you're having problems reaching out to people and getting notice, then maybe reach out to a publicist, see what they can offer you. Second would be if you have multiple projects going on and you're having a hard time juggling all of them, which is where I fit in. That's where I was. I have a lot of projects, as I said, editor, ghostwriter, publishing a magazine, running a press. So I needed some help. I needed someone to help get me, in contact with people that I normally wouldn't be talking to, and sort of cut down that wait time for me. So that also helps a lot to find a great person to work with you and sort of fill in that gap.
That's awesome. That's a lot of really, really good information for any aspiring authors out there. Alison, one thing I like to do whenever I'm speaking with someone on the show, I do like to give them the opportunity to talk about a project that they're working on, a cause they believe in, their business, something like that. So if there's something specific you'd like to talk about, I'd like to hand the floor over to you for the next 1 or 2 minutes.
I was helped a lot on this journey. So someone might look at, where I am now and say, oh, award-winning author, she's doing editing, she's doing ghostwriting, but it took a lot of steps to get here. And a lot of people helped me along the way. So I like to give back to the writer community too. So 2 things. One, as I said, I'm the publisher for a magazine called Scribes Micro, and we love new writers. And we often give feedback to writers who send in their submissions. And one of the proudest things that we've done is being the first publication credit for a lot of writers whose careers were launched after that. So now they might have dozens of publications to their names, but I am so happy that our magazine got them started, and that is a fantastic thing to me. So if you're a new writer, you don't have a publication credit, you're a bit scared to send your work out, please look up my magazine and reach out and say that. Say, this is the first time I'm submitting something. I've never been published before. Normally, you're not supposed to say that, but for mine, we encourage it. We like it. We would love to give you feedback. And you can ask for feedback. That's fine. Ask. I don't know what I'm doing. And again, don't do this with any other magazine. Our magazine, it's kosher. It's okay. But I love new writers and I love letting them get their voice out there. Along those lines, for my author versus AI project, again, I might be doing something maybe a lot of writers can't do or won't do, writing quickly and just sort of getting those books out there. But on my YouTube site, which is Author versus AI, I post tips and tricks each week about how to write a book, how to write a cover copy, how to write a chapter by chapter outline, how to write a book summary, how to write your hook. So basically all aspects from the beginning of this project to the end, I'm going to be breaking down each part of writing a book so that, and they're short videos, 1 to 2 minutes. So if you have ever thought, I want to write a book, I don't know how, or I want to write a book and I'm intimidated, check out my videos. They're hopefully friendly and they break down some very key things that that you should do or maybe shouldn't do in order to get your book started and get it out there all the way to publication. So it's a step-by-step process.
Allison, that's awesome. I love all of these tips, tricks, and resources that you're willing to share. That's just fantastic. I'll make sure I get all those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes, the description, on my website. I'm going to put them all over the place. So when people are looking for you, they can find you very, very easily.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Allison, it's been awesome having you on Time We Discussed, and we learned what it's like to be a ghostwriter, an editor, a writer, and what it's like to tackle AI.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely chatting with you.